හරිම සුදුයි.
Tonight on First at 9 this Saturday, the 2nd of March 2024. Sri Lanka Human Rights Update. UNHRC calls for comprehensive security sector reforms.
Last week, the appointment of a new Inspector General of Police was confirmed, despite the Supreme Court's finding that he was responsible for torture of an individual in 2010.
It expresses concerns over controversial local legislations.
Sustainable peace and reconciliation will not be achieved in Sri Lanka with regressive laws and authoritarian approaches.
Sri Lanka, meanwhile, criticizes the council for adopting double standards.
The very existence of the people in Gaza is under threat. Where are the resolutions and where are the accountability projects?
No backtracking. Former CBSL governor warns of serious consequences if the program with the IMF is reversed. He calls on the public to maintain pressure on the government to ensure program continuation.
I think there has to be enormous pressure from right through our society at all levels to say that don't make these same mistakes again.
German might. Germany assures assistance to Sri Lanka in debt restructure. German ambassador reiterates Germany's reliability as an ally.
We stand aside for Sri Lanka as well in the overcoming of debt restructuring efforts, and Sri Lanka can rely on Germany.
Tourism soars. Sri Lanka tourism continues to outperform recent historical numbers. Records best monthly tourist arrivals in February since January of 2020.
ඔබේ විශ්වාසය දිනු සෙන්සුරයින් දැන් ළඟමැති ෆාමසියෙන් ලබාගත හැක.
From Derana, this is Derana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and a very warm welcome to this Saturday's edition of Derana's English News First at 9. You are with Jonathan Benedict. Let's delve into our news for the evening, starting with our top story right now. United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, Volker Turk, expressed his concern over some of the legislation recently enacted and expected to be enacted by Sri Lanka's parliament, such as the Online Safety Act and the National Broadcasting Authority Bill, which he says can limit the fundamental rights of the people. Delivering an oral update on the human rights situation in Sri Lanka, the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights warned that Sri Lanka will not be able to achieve peace and reconciliation by passing regressive laws. Highlighting the new appointment made to the position of the Inspector General of Police, he said that Sri Lanka needs comprehensive security sector reforms. In response to the oral update, the Sri Lankan permanent representative to the UN offices in Geneva, Himali Arunatilaka, questioned the Council's application of double standards. Highlighting UN High Commissioner's concerns on acts including the Online Safety Act, the Sri Lankan representative confirmed that the Sri Lankan public have the freedom to challenge any bill at the Supreme Court. At the 11th meeting of the 55th regular session of the Human Rights Council, which was held yesterday, the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Volker Turk, delivered an update on the human rights situation in Sri Lanka.
While the government has taken important steps to stabilize the economy, I am concerned by the introduction of new or proposed laws with potentially far-reaching impact on fundamental rights and freedoms, the rule of law and democratic governance. These include the Online Safety Act, the Anti-Terrorism Bill, the Electronic Media Broadcasting Authority Bill and the NGO Supervision and Registration Bill, which variously strengthen the executive, grant broad powers to the security forces and severely restrict rights to freedom of assembly, association and expression, impacting not only on civic space but the business environment. This year, Sri Lanka marks 15 years since the end of a decades-long civil war. Yet violations of human rights remain unaddressed. Tens of thousands of families of the disappeared are still looking for their loved ones and face intimidation, arrests and violence in their search. Land disputes continue to escalate in the north and east of the country, impacting on people's livelihoods. Provincial councils and local government bodies that promised a measure of devolution are not currently constituted. It is almost 5 years since the devastating Easter Sunday bombings, and despite Supreme Court orders, victims are still seeking truth and justice. While the government has introduced a draft legislation for a Commission for Truth, Unity and Reconciliation, the environment for a credible truth-seeking process remains absent. Last week, the appointment of a new Inspector General of Police was confirmed, despite the Supreme Court's finding that he was responsible for torture of an individual in 2010. These cases highlight the need for comprehensive security sector reform. Sustainable peace and reconciliation will not be achieved in Sri Lanka with regressive laws and authoritarian approaches, which only serve to perpetuate the human rights concerns of the past. I urge the government immediately to reverse this trend and undertake credible accountability measures.
Later at that same meeting, Sri Lankan permanent representative to the UN offices in Geneva, Himali Arunatilaka, responded to the statement of the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights.
Despite severe constraints, our objectives remain steadfast and unwavering towards expediting efforts to strengthen the foundation of national unity, post-conflict reconciliation and human rights. Consultations on the draft Truth, Unity and Reconciliation Commission bill are ongoing with government, civil society, religious leaders and legal experts. Gazetted on the 1st of January, it will be tabled in Parliament after providing sufficient time for the public to express their views. An interim secretariat to lay the foundation for the Commission was established in May last year and continues its work. Making progress last year, the Office on Missing Persons traced 16 persons to be alive and confirmed 3 as deceased. 1,313 families received certificates of absence. Despite the financial situation in the country, the Office for Reparations granted 41.2 million rupees last year to the families of the missing. Through the special unit established under the Presidential Secretariat, work relating to land release, resettlement of IDPs and development in the northern and eastern provinces is expedited. The Online Safety Bill, a domestic legislation that the government is now in the process of amending in good faith, is taking into consideration the additional proposals presented by civil society and other stakeholders. After reviewing petitions following the tabling of the revised anti-terrorism bill in Parliament on 10th January, the Supreme Court has provided its determination on the said bill. The government has taken cognizance of the Supreme Court determination and the bill will be appropriately amended prior to being passed into law. 6 rounds of consultations with civil society organizations had taken place regarding the draft NGO Act. It is emphasized that there is the necessity of incorporating provisions in the bill to tackle concerns such as terrorism financing and money laundering, while all concerns raised by civil society organizations had been considered and integrated into the draft bill. This demonstrates that the current environment in Sri Lanka is such that the public have the freedom to challenge any proposed legislation. We cannot condone the continuing double standards of some sectors that provide no tangible relief to grievances, but only contribute to the politicization of human rights. The very existence of the people in Gaza is under threat. Where are the resolutions and where are the accountability projects?
Stay the course. That was the rallying cry of former Central Bank Governor Dr. Indrajit Kumaraswamy while addressing an event held in Colombo, stating that Sri Lanka, which is slated for elections this year, should not deviate from the current reform program initiated by the IMF conditions necessary for the aid package, highlighting that any reversal can be detrimental to the country's economy against a backdrop where tangible progress has been achieved in the economic indicators of the country. The former central bank chief said that there has to be pressure from society towards the government to ensure that the reform program continues.
The Business Forum of the Sri Lanka America Society was held recently in Colombo. Participating in the event as the guest speaker, former Central Bank Governor Dr. Indrajit Kumaraswamy contributed his insights on the topic sustaining stabilization while promoting inclusive growth.
At every level, if you look at the growth, the price movement, fiscal performance, external performance, we have stabilized the situation. And that is extremely creditable given where we started from. We have had 16 IMF programs before this, and in the previous programs also, we have done pretty well in stabilizing the economy. It hasn't been as challenging as this occasion, but we have done well in getting inflation down, getting the fiscal performance improved, having some improvement in the external balance, having some stability in the external. All those things we've done. But what happens is, as the program goes through and the electoral cycle comes to an end, everything goes down the tubes because the discipline goes and we go back to square one, which is why we have had to go to the IMF 17 times. So we've got to the right place. We've got a good foundation. Elections are coming. We cannot do the same thing again. Einstein's definition of insanity was to do the same thing again and again and to expect a different outcome. So I think we need to internalize that message and make sure that we don't go down the same road again. I'm hopeful that this time it will be different and that we've learned the lessons we should learn because of the depth of the crisis that we experienced a couple of years ago. But that's important, and I don't think we can all sit back and expect the politicians to deliver on this. I think there has to be enormous pressure from right through our society at all levels to say that don't make these same mistakes again. We don't want handouts which will only eventually result in inflation going up, imports going to unsustainable levels, and us having to then later on have to suffer through adjustment and austerity, what have you. This is a message that I think every single Sri Lankan needs to take heed of and make sure that these same mistakes are not made again, because we have come quite a long way and done very well, but you can't throw it away at this point.
Underscoring the long-standing friendship between Germany and Sri Lanka, German ambassador to Sri Lanka, Dr. Felix Neumann, asserted that Germany will continue to support Sri Lanka in overcoming the debt restructuring process that the country is undergoing. Speaking to the media during a visit to the Ceylon German Tech Institute, the envoy to Sri Lanka further went on to say that Germany will assist Sri Lanka in all its projects and highlighted that this visit underscores the widespread interest of Germany for Sri Lanka in enhancing the economic development of the country. The German ambassador to Sri Lanka, along with a delegation comprising of German parliamentarians, engaged in an observational tour of the Ceylon German Technical Training Institute today.
The parts in the device, person step by step. What do you want?
We are convinced in Germany that good vocational training, good school training is a key issue for the future of every person. It's also a key issue for the development of industry or every other sector in your country. And so we are very happy to be here to see it's one of the good parts to strengthen the German-Sri Lankan contacts. And that is also a point of our visit here. I'm very happy that, for example, the foreign minister of Sri Lanka has been at the Munich Security Conference 2 weeks ago. So it's on the vocational training level, but it's also on foreign and international politics that we try to work together.
We are here with the German group of parliamentarians, the Parliamentarian Group for South Asia. It shows the widespread interest in the German parliament for Sri Lanka, which is a country in the center of the Indo-Pacific, of the Indian Ocean. Germany is here as a friend. It's a long-standing friendship. For 70 years we supported Sri Lanka, and Germany will continue to be a friend here in this project and other projects. We stand aside for Sri Lanka as well in the overcoming of debt restructuring efforts, and Sri Lanka can rely on Germany.
Now, newly appointed Inspector General of Police Deshabandhu Thennakoon revealed that plans are underway to repatriate Sri Lankan criminal gang members under police custody overseas in collaboration with police authorities of the relevant nations. He added that a special team from the Criminal Investigation Department has been appointed where this is concerned to oversee the matter. The Inspector General of Police further went on to state that a plan to ensure the complete eradication of narcotic substances within a time span of 3 months has been executed, adding that urban and populated areas where narcotic substances are still being discovered must be expeditiously addressed.
The newly appointed 36th Inspector General of Police of Sri Lanka, Inspector General Deshabandhu Thennakoon, visited the temple of Truthveli Kinkandi today.
මෙරට ක්‍රියාත්මක කිරීමේ සංවිධාත්මක අපරාධ කල්ලි මෙහෙවන්නන් මැද පෙරදිග සහ වෙනත් රටවල් ලෙස ක්‍රියා කරන අපි ජාත්‍යන්තර පොලිසිය සහයත් එක්ක පොලිස් භාරය පසුවිනාය ඒ අය මෙරට ගෙන්වා ගැනීම සම්බන්ධයෙන් මහජන ආරක්ෂක ඇමතුමත් විදේශ කටයුතු ඇමතුමාගෙත් මැදිහත් වීම තුළ සාකච්ඡා කිරීම මේ දවස්වල සිදු වෙනවා. අපරාධ පරීක්ෂණ දෙපාර්තමේන්තුවේ කණ්ඩායමක් තියාගෙන ඉන්නේ සූදානම්මින් එරටින් කැඳවීමක් ලද වහාම ගෙන්න ගන්න ක්‍රියා කරනවා.
The Inspector General of Police called on the chief prelates of Malwata and Askari chapters and received blessings thereafter.
අපේ මෙහෙයුම සහ සාර්ථක තත්ත්වයක ඇති වෙලා තියෙනවා. මද්‍රව්‍ය අපරාධ සම්බන්ධ නැත්නම් නැති වෙලා නැහැ. ඉදිරි මාස තුනේදී මේක සම්පූර්ණයෙන්ම ප්‍රතිකරණ ගැන තමයි සරස්මක් ක්‍රියාත්මක කරනවා. ඌව පළාත, සබරගම් පළාත, දුරුමැද ගම් මට්ටමේදී විච්ච මද්‍රව්‍ය සෑහෙන දුරට නැති වෙනවා. තව නාගරික ප්‍රදේශවල ටිකක් ජාතිකීර්ණ ප්‍රදේශවල සුළු වශයෙන් තියෙනවා. ඒක ටික නැති කරගන්න ගමට මද්‍රව්‍ය ගියේ නවත්තන්න.
In other news, the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation yesterday announced that the daily operations of the Sapaga Oil Refinery will henceforth be temporarily suspended for 45 days beginning this July for a major overhaul. The CPC in a statement said that this essential maintenance and repair process is mandatory in compliance with international norms in order to ensure safe and reliable operations at the refinery for 3 more years. Sapaga Oil Refinery's previous turnaround, or TAR, last took place in February of 2021. TAR, in refinery terms, generally refers to the inspection and testing and maintenance of the refinery during a downtime to upgrade the facility. As such, the facility will be subject to upgrades designed to boost its contribution to Sri Lanka's changing product requirements once the facility resumes functions after the pre-planned extensive maintenance and repair operations. During the period the refinery remains shut, the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation will maintain a buffer stock of refined products to ensure an uninterrupted supply. Asia Pacific Regional Director of the United Nations Population Fund, P.O. Smith, says that his organization will invest towards a sustainable future for youth in Sri Lanka. Addressing an event in Colombo, the UNFP Regional Director expressed his support to Sri Lanka in achieving the goal of further reducing preventable maternal deaths by 2030. An event to commemorate the 30th anniversary of the International Conference on Population Development, which transformed global thinking on population, development issues, and which defined a bold agenda, placing people's dignity and rights at the heart of sustainable development, was held in Colombo last evening.
Our commitment to supporting the people of Sri Lanka remains unwavering as we enter the next phase of our journey. From system strengthening to service delivery, policy advocacy, and increasing accountability for women and girls. To innovation and transformation, we stand committed to support the people of Sri Lanka.
Here in Sri Lanka, we have been working hard for 5 decades. Together with government and other partners, our efforts have paved the way for Sri Lanka's achievements in sexual and reproductive health and rights. Sri Lanka has shown its unwavering commitment to realizing that promise. Sri Lanka has indeed shown the power of collective action and dedication to the principles of the ICPD agenda through its commendable achievements in education and in health outcomes. When we invest in our youth, we invest in a sustainable future for Sri Lanka. And while with the collective efforts of stakeholders and the leadership of successive governments, Sri Lanka has been recognized as having one of the best maternal health outcomes in the world across its peers. Sri Lanka is poised to mark another milestone for setting a remarkable target of further reducing preventable maternal deaths by half by the year 2030. Making that a reality means we truly have to reach the last mile. Further investing in the primary healthcare workforce means more equitable access for people in the community.
We commit to investing in education, age-friendly health services, reproductive rights, and social protection to ensure the well-being of future generations. Our commitment is to build an inclusive and sustainable future, leveraging the potential of women and youth to address emerging challenges such as climate change, population aging, and migration.
And as we commemorate the 30 years of ICPD, Sri Lanka's commitment to empowering women in national development agendas remain critical. I believe that a women's empowerment bill and a gender equality bill will be presented to the Sri Lankan cabinet next week, and bills which I hope will address to some extent some of the concerns and demands of us women made not years ago but actually decades ago. Of course, there needs to be the requisite financial resources and the political will for their enforcement in the coming years once they have been enacted by Parliament.
Additional Secretary to the Ministry of Health, Dr. Saman Ratnayaka, who was arrested last evening, was remanded until the 14th of March. Dr. Ratnayaka was produced before the Maliga Kanda Magistrates Court this morning. The Criminal Investigation Department apprehended him in connection with the substandard human intravenous immunoglobulin procurement scandal. Dr. Ratnayaka was placed under arrest 9 hours after he arrived at the CID premises last morning to provide a statement. He was then taken to the Valikada prison in Colombo after the Maliga Kanda magistrate ordered his arrest on remand. He was later moved to the Mahara prison. 8 alleged suspects, including former Health Minister Keheli Rambukwella and former Secretary to the Ministry of Health Janaka Sri Chandragupta, have been placed in remand custody in line with the import of substandard vials of human immunoglobulin as the Attorney General's Department continues to carry out this inquiry. Opposition leader Sajith Premadasa states that he is confident of uplifting the government school education system of Sri Lanka once he gains power and secures presidency under a Samagi Janabalavegia-led government. In the meantime, Colombo district leader of the United National Party, Ravi Karunanayaka, highlighted the need for a mechanism to provide practical solutions for the country, further adding that there is no point of discussing matters after problems are solved if the leaders are unable to take on a challenge during the hard times of that present day.
අපේ රටේ තියෙන ප්‍රශ්නේ තමයි හොඳ දෙයක් අලුත් දෙයක් නූතනවාදී දෙයක් කරන්න හදනකොට හැමෝම කුලප්පු කරලා මහා පාරට දානවා. මම එකක් කියන්න කැමතියි. මගේ රජයක් තුල කවුරු පාරට බැස්සත් මට ප්‍රශ්නයක් නැහැ. මට වැදගත් වෙන්නේ රජයේ පාසල් 10126 ඉගෙනුම ලබන දූ දරුවන් 41 ලක්ෂය. මේ රටේ රාජ්‍ය නායකයා හැටියට අනිවාර්යෙන්ම මේ රටේ රජයේ පාසල් පද්ධතිය අතිශය උසස් මට්ටමකට අපි ගෙනෙනවාමයි.
අපට අවශ්‍ය වී තිබෙන මොකද්ද? පද්ධතියේම පරිවර්තනයක් අවශ්‍යයි. මේ රටත් මේ රටේ ජනතාවත් පිළිබඳ ඔබට තියෙන බලාපොරොත්තුව හා සමාන බලාපොරොත්තුවක් තමයි මටත් තියෙන්නේ.
අද මේ දැක්මක් තියෙනවා කියලා වැඩපිළිවෙලක් තියෙනවා කියලා කතා කරන වේදිකා හදාගෙන කෑ ගහන කිසිම නායකයෙක් මේ රටේ මිලියන 22ක් ජනතාව මුහුණ දීපු ආර්ථික සහ සමාජීය අර්බුදය තුලදී දේශපාලන අර්බුදය තුලදී මේ රට ස්ථාවර කරන්න වගකීමක් ගත්තේ නැහැ. ඒ අය පැනලා ගියා, අය හැංගිලා හිටියේ. ඉතින් එවැනි තත්වයක හිටපු අයට කිසිම අවස්ථාවක රටක් ඉස්සරහට ගෙනියන්න හැකියාවක් නැහැ. ඒගොල්ලන්ට හැමදාම පුළුවන් වෙන්නේ වේදිකාවක් හදාගන්න විපක්ෂයට වෙලා ඒ වේදිකාව තුල හිස් වචන ප්‍රකාශ කරන්න.
ජනතාව දැක්කම පේන්නේ නැද්ද? රැල්ල කොහෙද කියලා ඉවරලා. සමගි ජන බලවේග ආණ්ඩුවක් අදලා සජිත් ප්‍රේමදාස මැතිතුමා ජනාධිපති කරලා මමත් ඇමතිකමක් කරගෙන කොළොන්නාව දිනු කරන එක.
රටට ප්‍රායෝගිකව උත්තර දෙන්න පුළුවන් විදියක් තියෙන්න ඕනේ. ඉතින් අභියෝගයේ මේ ගිනි ගන්න වෙලාවේ ගන්න බැරි නම් ප්‍රශ්නේ විසුවට පස්සේ ඔය වගේ නූසුත්තර වැඩ කියලා වැඩක් නැහැ.
Welcome back. Sri Lanka Air Force proudly celebrated its 73rd anniversary today as Guardians of the Skies, marking more than 7 decades of service to the nation. Meanwhile, a 22-year-old was arrested in connection with the shooting incident which took place in Boralla recently. With that, here's a look at more news across the island in brief.
Marking more than 7 decades of service to the nation, Sri Lanka Air Force proudly celebrated its 73rd anniversary this morning. A special event was organised today at the Sri Lanka Air Force headquarters under the patronage of Air Marshal Udeni Rajapaksa. The SLAF asserted that it remains steadfast in its duty as the guardians of Sri Lanka's skies and an able contributor to achieving sustainable peace. Meanwhile, in other local news, a 22-year-old was arrested in connection with the shooting incident which took place in Boralla recently. Accordingly, the apprehension was made in the Sedawat area of Grand Pass today along with the motorcycle used in the shooting. According to police, the 22-year-old was the rider of the motorcycle. In other news, a person transporting 410 grams of heroin was apprehended along with the motorcycle used in the process. According to police, the suspect was identified as a 40-year-old resident of Kalania. However, investigations into the matter are currently underway by the Dematagoda police.
Now with some brilliantly good news, Sri Lanka's tourism industry exponentially has boomed since the beginning of the year, as Sri Lanka tallied a total of 218,350 tourist arrivals in February, marking the highest number of tourists per month since January of 2020. This number further transcends the total of 208,253 tourist arrivals recorded in January this year, also becoming the second consecutive month with over 200,000 arrivals. With this exceptional statistic, Sri Lanka has thus far welcomed a total of 426,603 tourists this year.
According to the latest data issued by the Tourism Development Authority, Sri Lanka welcomed 218,350 tourists for February, surpassing the total of 208,253 arrivals recorded in January of this year. This also marks the second consecutive month with over 200,000 arrivals, as well as the highest number per month since January of 2020. In addition, this denotes a significant spike in comparison to the 107,639 arrivals recorded over the corresponding period last year. Meanwhile, during the third week of February, Sri Lanka saw the highest number of weekly arrivals amounting to 55,537, with a total of 6,908 tourists for the 29th of February alone. With these significant statistics, we can now confirm that Sri Lanka has tallied a total of 426,603 tourists over just the past 2 months. Per the Tourism Development Authority, 15% of tourist arrivals were recorded from Russia, amounting to a total of 32,030 arrivals. Coming in second was India, recording a total of 30,027 tourist arrivals. A substantial number of tourist arrivals were also recorded from the United Kingdom, Germany, China and France. Meanwhile, yesterday, the central bank's latest report on external sector performance disclosed that Sri Lanka's earnings from tourism were estimated at $342 million in January of this year, which is the highest monthly value the country has enjoyed since January of 2020.
HMB General Insurance, together with Sampath Bank, announced a collaborative partnership that offers customers a 12-month 0% interest payment plan on both motor and non-motor insurance policies. This collaborative effort is to highlight the need and accessibility of insurance to the public. With that, here's a look at more corporate news from across the island in brief.
H&B General Insurance yesterday announced a collaborative partnership with Sampath Bank, providing customers with a 12-month 0% interest payment plan on both motor and non-motor insurance policies. This partnership further enables Sampath Bank credit card holders to enjoy a budget-friendly installment on their insurance premiums, easing financial constraints and making essential coverage more achievable. During the event, it was highlighted that this collaboration underscores the commitment of the two entities in making insurance more inclusive and affordable for everyone. In the meantime, Maravilla Resorts PLC announced the dealings carried out by its directors. Accordingly, Anushman Rajaratnam, serving as a non-executive director of the company, disposed a total of 32,310 shares at ₹2.90 per share. The relevant transaction was notified to the board of directors on the 28th of February this year. In other corporate news, Janashakti Life, a member of the Janashakti Group, announced the appointment of a non-executive director to the company. Accordingly, Dilip D.S. Vijayaratna was appointed as an independent non-executive director to the company's board of directors with effect from the 14th of February.
That wraps up my bulletin for this evening. Join us again tomorrow at the same time for more English news right here on First at 9. For now, this is Jonathan Benedict, wishing you a good night and a blessed Sunday ahead.
For news and information you can trust 24 hours a day, visit adaderana.lk.